Hello everybody, welcome back. I hope everybody had a good day today. Thank you very much for coming. All right. So today is our last session. It's our last day together for a while. I hope everybody has found the book useful and the sessions useful as well. It's kind of a new concept for many people taking these kinds of lessons. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. And today we're going to talk about the last part of the TOEIC test, part 7 from the TOEIC test, which is arguably the most challenging. It's the biggest and maybe scariest part of the test. So we're going to try extra hard to help everybody get through that section. All right. First of all, just a quick reminder as well, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. It's great to have you. Thank you for coming. If you want to leave a comment or ask a question at any time, you can do so in the chat section. Hello again, Kana. Thank you for coming. I can see your comments, which is great. Let me write something back. Yay. Great. All right. Thank you for coming. Hello, hello. Oh, welcome. Welcome back. Great. Some familiar faces. Familiar names, I should say. There are no faces. Familiar names. It's great to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. So, for those of you who are in Japan at the moment, I'm not sure what part of Japan you are in, but I hope the weather is not too bad for today. Hopefully everyone is at home in front of their computer. You don't have to worry about your internet connection or anything like that. All right, yeah, everybody please stay safe over the next couple of hours because of the typhoon. All right. Great. Okay, thank you so much for coming. Just a quick reminder, again, if you are joining us for the first time, here is our book for this evening. So you can go ahead and grab that book. And we are going to start with the exercises on page 57. If you don't have a textbook, that's absolutely fine. Again, it might be a little bit difficult to follow along because we're going to be doing the reading section today. If you don't have the passages in front of you, the explanations might not make too much sense. However, we are still going to talk about some tips and some things you can keep in mind when you're doing the test. So feel free to stick around even if you don't have the book, and we can talk about the methods together. Hello there, Arthur. Welcome. Thank you for coming. All right. All right. I think we can get started. Maybe more people will join us a little bit later. But again, if you have any questions or comments at any point, please leave them in the comment section, and I will respond to you as soon as the time lag catches up with me, which is about 40 seconds. All right, so I apologize for that. Okay, great. Okay, before we look at the textbook for today, let's talk a little bit about this stuff back here. All right, so when you're doing the last part of the reading section for the TOEIC test, again, please remember this is the part that you should probably be spending the most amount of time on. So yesterday and the day before, we talked about spending about 30 minutes on part 5 and part 6. Ideally, you could try 30 minutes for part 5 and part 6 combined. That would be the best situation. So that would leave you at least 40 minutes, approximately 40 minutes, to get through part 7, give or take 5 to 10 minutes or so. All right, so keeping that in mind, we probably won't get through the entire part 7 today, but that's okay. You will have some stuff that you can work on at home on your own after the session. All right. So keeping that in mind, first thing, just as a reminder, is the timing. All right. So please keep in mind you should have about 40 minutes at least to do part 7 when you enter the test. Okay. Next thing, let's talk about a couple of words and phrases that we can keep in mind to navigate through the long reading passages. All right. So this is just a sample of something called signal words. So possibly you've already studied signal words. This might sound familiar to you already. Signal words are just really, really good indicators of important information. So when you're reading any kind of a reading passage, it could be a novel, it could be an essay, it could be an email, a letter. Most kinds of reading will include signal words to indicate the important pieces of information. All right. This is just a very, very small sample of some kinds of signal words. All right. You can categorize them in a number of different ways. So for example, on this side, we have sequence words that you can keep in mind. So sequence words would include things like first, then, next, after, and so on, something like that. All right, so kind of organizing things from first to last would be sequence signal words. All right. You can also watch out for descriptive words, so description words. For example, things like, for instance, in addition, or another, or even the one I just used, for example, we could include that in the description category. So anytime where they're going to give you more information about something, you can watch out for descriptive phrases. Okay. Again, feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. All right. I'm going through these quite quickly this evening. Okay. The next one that I chose for you today are cause and effect phrases. So these would include, let me get out of the way, these would include things like as a result. So this happened as a result of something else. With the same meaning, because is a cause and effect word, and due to, for example. All right, so those are really useful if you're looking at the way that things are connected, a cause and effect in some kind of a reading passage. All right, and the last category we can think of or keep in mind for today would be compare and contrast. So we've got quite a few up here just as a reminder. So for example, as well as, I think that's really small, I hope you can see that, as well as, so you're kind of adding something, as well as, similarly, so two things are very similar, they're almost the same, similarly. Let's try also as well, also, to, if you can see that, to, though, and however. So very, very high frequency, common compare and contrast words. Okay, again, this is just a very, very small sample of what we call signal words. Oh, hello there, welcome. Thank you for coming. All right, so this is just a very, very small sample of what we would call signal words. So I highly recommend doing some research on your own. I'm going to give you that as a little bit of homework. You can Google or use a grammar book or something. You might want to review the importance of various kinds of signal words before your next TOEIC test. All right, I'm just going to leave those there for tonight, though, so that we can think about them while we're working. All right, nice job. Okay, so we've got two more notes, two more kinds of techniques that we can keep in mind to navigate through part 7 for today. All right, let's start with this one, actually. This makes more sense. So let's have a look. 3 steps that you could do to time manage the way that you handle the reading passage the best. All right, so again, we talked about part 5 and part 6, how you might not have to read the entire section in order to answer the questions. Part 7 is a little more complex. It actually really depends on the situation and depends on your confidence level and also how long the reading passage is. So there's a number of factors to keep in mind when deciding whether you need to read the whole thing or not. All right. But in general, we can maybe narrow it down to these 3 steps, the way that you could go about reading the passage. So the first thing I would recommend for any passage, short or long, the first thing I would recommend would be to skim the passage. So as you may have heard in the past, there is a difference between skimming and scanning and detailed reading, or there might be another term for it that you have heard in the past. All right, there's different ways to approach a reading text. All right, but in this case, I'm going to recommend skimming the passage first. So basically go through it as quickly as possible from top to bottom and get the general idea, the general gist of what's going on. All right, this includes reading the title and reading everything at the top of the reading passage, everything in bold and everything at the bottom as well, which I'm going to talk about or mention again a little bit later. But it's very important not to skip any information or any parts of the format, even when you are skimming. It's very tempting to kind of just jump right to the middle of what's in front of you, but don't do that. Have a look at the big picture, even when you're skimming the passage. All right. After you do that, after you have a general idea of what kind of text you are handling, the second thing I would recommend is then to go and have a look at the questions. So that way you can return for part 3 to look more specifically or scan for the answers to that to those questions. Okay, so let's go over that again. Skim the passage first, get a general idea, have a look at the questions and the possible responses, A, B, C, and D. Get those in your head, and then return to the reading to scan for more details. All right. By doing this first, you should have a better idea of where in the passage you can look for the answers. So that's why I recommend doing this first. All right. Great job. Okay, and just a couple more things before we get down to it for tonight. A couple extra notes, just things to keep in mind. All right. First one is that the questions are usually in order. So again, if you've done the TOEIC test before, this is probably not news to you. You've probably figured this out for yourself. However, if you haven't done the TOEIC before, what's kind of nice to know is that the questions are usually in sequence or in order. So if they might start by asking you, what is this about? What is this passage about? Which kind of makes sense because you can usually determine that from early on in the passage, maybe the opening line or the heading or the title. So that will usually come to you first, even when you are skimming or scanning. All right. As they ask the questions, it will probably align quite nicely with the order of the passage. Again, this is not 100% rule. That's why I use usually. Questions are usually in order. So again, that could help you have a look at what order you're looking for the answers in. Okay. Second thing, I already touched on this a little bit, but basically be sure to check the title and the format for clues to your answers. All right. So again, don't skip any of the fine print, because that fine print or that bold print or the title or the heading or any of the things that kind of look like just extra window dressing stuff, it can actually give you some useful hints or clues about what kind of passage you are dealing with. All right, that includes phone numbers and all kinds of stuff. All right, so don't skip, don't forget to look at the big picture, is my point. All right, and the last thing is you may have to infer an answer, which basically just means please be careful, because the wording quite often is not always the same from the passage to the questions. All right, so you may have to, again, look at the bigger picture and try and determine the answer to the question from some slightly different phrasing or many different pieces of information. You may have to put those together in order to correctly answer one of the questions. It's very rare that it's going to be right in front of you and just that you can pick it out and use it for the answer. You're probably, in many, many cases for part 7, you're probably going to have to put pieces of information together in order to answer those questions. All right, that's what I mean by infer. All right, kind of thinking outside the box. All right, nice job. Okay, lots of information for today. We've kind of got 3 different things going on in the back. But again, if you have any questions about anything we just talked about very, very quickly, please let me know in the comments section. All right, thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Okay, let's get started. So again, I will keep an eye on the time for you. And what we can try to do in order to sort of get an idea of what kinds of passages we are working on or that we can expect in part 7, let's skip every second passage, if that's okay with you. So for example, we can start with the first passage, which is on page 57, which is a web page. So you can try that one, and then we will skip the next couple of questions. So let me type this up for you. So 153 to 154 refer to the first reading passage. So we can do those ones first. Don't do them yet. We can do those first, and then we can skip 155, 156, 157. You can do that on your own, and together we can move on to 158, for example, 158 to 160. All right, I hope that's okay with you. It's just to give us a larger sense of progress, because I highly doubt we're going to finish part 7 for today. All right, it's just to get as much of it completed as possible. All righty. Okay, cool. So keeping that in mind, I will keep an eye on the time, and I will give you a maximum of 2 minutes per article. All right, maximum 2 minutes per article. Per article means please answer all of the questions that pertain to that reading passage. All right, so it's usually 2 or 3 questions, at least at the beginning. There's more later on towards the end. All right, but 2 minutes per reading passage. All right. Okay, once again, if you have any questions, just let me know. Okay, so let's get started. Whenever you're ready, we're on page we're on page 57, and we're going to start with 153. All right, here we go. Eye on the time. Good luck. Ready, set, go. Okay, I'm going to interrupt you there. Thank you very much. Okay, so how was it? How was the first one? We've got 2 questions to deal with for this first reading passage. All right, so just as a reminder, if this is your first time joining us, please feel free to leave your answers in the chat section. Again, it's all anonymous, it's all YouTube. Nobody can see you. So if you want to leave your answers in the chat section, please do so. That way I will have a better idea of what kinds of questions are challenging, and I can spend more time focusing on the ones that are difficult for you. All right. So at the moment, I don't have any responses in the chat section. So let's talk about 153 and 154 together. All right, so 153, first of all, what did you get? So do you think it was A, B, C, or D? The answer was A for 153. The answer was A. All right, so the question was, for whom is the information intended? So very, very general question. Again, probably something you could establish quite early on, and something you could establish from scanning the passage, all right, for the information intended. So once you've established that it is a web page, you can have a general idea of where to look for that kind of information. So it's probably going to be quite early on at the top of the web page. In a real situation, somebody searching on the web page, the most important information, or who the audience member is that it's directed towards, is going to be mentioned at the top of the page most of the time. All right, which is the case in this example. So the answer is A, customers placing orders. So the way we know that is actually from the first section of the web page. There's a little number 1. It says contact information. Customer service representatives are available to help you by phone. So that you, it's very small, you might have missed it, but the combination of customer representatives plus you. So representatives will usually help customers. So the closest match we have would be A, customers placing orders. All right, nice job. 154, what did you get? A, B, C, or D? Let's have a look. So the answer for 154 is C. Answer is C for 154. All right, so the question is, what is indicated on the web page? Again, a very, very general question. All right, so this would come from a skimming of the passage. So just to get a general idea what's on the web page, you can establish that from your initial skimming of the passage. All right, so what you can do in this case, A and B can be eliminated quite quickly, especially if you answered 153 correctly and you already know that this passage is for customers placing orders. Once you know that, that means A and B can be eliminated quite quickly because both of those have nothing to do with customer service or customers placing orders. So we're left with C and D. If we have a quick look at D, all products are shipped within 2 days. You could check that if you want to figure out which one to eliminate, C or D. You could go ahead and check D by scanning very specifically in the shipping section. So both C and D have to do with shipping. So hopefully once you got rid of A and B, you directed your attention to just the shipping section of the web page, which is part 5. So you could go ahead, read the shipping part in more detail, and from that, you would establish that C, international orders are accepted, is the best option. D is incorrect because it's actually not all products, it just says standard products at the top line. Orders of standard products usually ship within 2 business days. All right, so that doesn't mean all products. All right. I hope we're following the thought process here. Sounds good. Very nice. Okay, great. Still no comment, so we're going to keep going. All right, so let's skip the next one. Let's skip the next one. So next page, next page. Have a look at 158 to 160. All right, so new passage. Eye on the time. All right, ready? 2 minutes. Go. Okay, I'm going to cut you off there. Thank you very much. Okay, sorry to interrupt. All right, so how was that one? It's a little bit different. So we're not dealing with a web page at this point. We've got an advertisement of some kind. Alrighty, so let's go through it together. 158. Again, if anybody wants to offer any responses, feel free to stick them in the comment section. Just a reminder. Okay, so 158, let's have a look. The question is, what is suggested about Wynn's music? Wynn's music. All right, so how do we go about this? Hopefully you skimmed the passage, first of all. All right, the answer is, let me put this down. Answer is C. All right, the answer is C, so please check your answer. The answer is it sells instruments for children. Okay, so A and B, again, can be eliminated from a skimming of the passage. All right, so quite, there's no indication, basically, of a recently opened new store or that it's owned by a famous musician. For B, they did mention a family-owned business, but they didn't mention anything about it being famous. All right. Same with D, where it says it specializes in pianos. They actually continually stress the fact that all musical instruments are available, which you can see in part 2. It says these include all musical instruments and accessories. All right, as well as instrument repairs at the bottom, which again indicates all instruments, not just pianos. All right, so that leaves us with C. It sells instruments for children. Where we can get that is from the end of part 1, where it says, we provide an array of goods and services for students and music lovers of all ages. Of all ages. So, as you probably know, in a real setting, that phrase is usually used when they're trying to draw in the business of adults and children as well. So that's what they are wanting to suggest. They're suggesting we accept children too. So that's kind of an important part of the advertisement, which is why it was asked as well on the test. That's something else to keep in mind. In addition to the questions usually being in order, you can also assume that the questions are going to relate to something relevant in the article most of the time. So the questions are trying to ask you something that is actually important from the advertisement or from the email or something. So again, the most important part for an advertisement would be C, the fact that they are appealing to children as well as adults, because it's an advertisement. Okay. Nice work. All right, 159. Let's have a look. 159. What is available only in the North City store? Okay, so this one is a bit of a puzzle. You may have been tempted to have a look for the phrase North City store, which would be great, North City store. So what you could do is scan for that phrase, particularly because it has a big N and a big C. It could probably jump out at you a little bit easier. So you can grab that and scan for it again back in the passage. The first place where it's listed is right at the top. And this is, again, what I mean about not skipping any information. So right underneath the name, Wynn's Music, you've got 2 addresses. The one on the left is where you first see North City, which is actually quite important and quite useful because what you can do is move down into part 2 where it says 1, 2, 3, third line. It says private lessons for all instruments, and then in brackets at 131 Court Street only. So you found North City in the top left corner, and you had a look at the address, which is 131 Harcourt Street. So that means you can connect that down to the third line in the second part of the advertisement. All right, so that's how we wound up with B as the answer for 159. Okay, it's a bit convoluted. Nice job though. All right, and last one, 160. 160, any answers? All right, let's look at the question. So when is it not possible for a customer to try an instrument? So this is also very important. Even if you're feeling a bit tired later on in the TOEIC test, do not get these kinds of questions confused. All right, they actually put it in bold for you. So when is it not possible? Not when is it possible? Completely different question. All right, so please be careful about that. When is it not possible for a customer to try an instrument? All right, so there's two parts to this. In the third section, which you, again, hopefully can establish by skimming the passage, you could say, we invite you to come into one of our shops during regular opening hours to test our instruments. Ta-da! All right, but that's not good enough. That's not enough information. So now we need to check where are the regular opening hours. Sorry, I should say when are the regular opening hours. So you can move down to hours of operation. All right, and this is also what I mean by inferring information. So it doesn't actually tell you explicitly in the article what day they don't allow you to try an instrument. You have to kind of piece things together. All right, so if you look at the hours of operation, it turns out the store is not open on Monday, which means Monday is the day when you cannot try an instrument, because any other day where they are open is okay to try an instrument. So that leaves us with A as the answer. On Monday, you cannot try an instrument. Okay. Good job. Nice work. Okay, moving on. If we don't have any questions, let's skip 161 to 162. You can do that on your own. Next one. All right, please have a look at 163 to 165. All right, go ahead. We've got 2 minutes from now. Go ahead. Okay, sorry to interrupt. That brings us to 2 minutes. Alrighty. So, let's have a look. 163. Alright, so now we are looking through an email. So it's a little bit different, again, from what we've looked at so far. Alright, so 163. The question is, what is offered in the email? Again, very, very general question. So hopefully something that you can establish from your initial skim of the passage. All right, so what is offered in the email? So basically, from the tone of the email, if we look at the very first line, for example, I am writing to share some exciting news with you. Sounds quite positive, so you can eliminate B, because it doesn't really sound like there's an apology or an error being addressed in this email. It wouldn't be that positive in that situation. All right. So if we keep skimming as we go through it, we will notice the answer is C. All right. And the way that we know that is because especially part 2 starts with the phrase free samples. So free samples are being offered only to customers who have purchased blah, blah, blah. We'll come to that a little bit later. So they mention free samples a number of times. In the second line, it says, if you wish to receive samples of the new line of our products, blah, blah, blah. All right, so it's pretty clear. Oh, very nice, very nice. Thank you, Kana. Yes, so from that context, based on the tone and also the fact that there are a number of samples mentioned, the best one to choose would be C. The other ones, unfortunately, don't match. D might have been tempting because it mentioned instructions, which some kind of instructions are given a little bit later in the email, but unfortunately that is not the general topic. That's not what we're discussing in this email. All right, so yes, the answer is C. Very nice. 164, all right, bit challenging, possibly. So let's look at the question. What is suggested about the person that they're writing? Mr. Kaminsky. Mr. Kaminsky, all right. So if we have a look through part 2, again, this is something that you could go back and scan for after you've checked the options for the questions, A, B, C, and D. You can go back and scan them. However, if you got C correctly from 163, if you got 163 correct, that means you could have a look in more detail for this information about the chance to win some products. All right, which would bring us to D. The answer is actually D for 164, which is he shopped at the Fruitisms online store in the past. And we got that from the same line for part 2, where it says free samples are being offered only to customers who have purchased Fruitism juices from our online store within the last year. All right, so that means they wouldn't be contacting Mr. Kaminsky if he hadn't bought some products. So D is definitely correct in that case. All right, otherwise he wouldn't be getting the email. And finally, 165. Let's have a look. How can Mr. Kaminsky receive a sample? Any ideas? The answer is actually D. Very nice, very nice. The answer is D, 165. All right, and he can receive them by providing a code. So again, once you've skimmed through the passage and had a look at the questions and the options, you can take those options and then go back into the email and scan for any of those potential answers. So for example, by providing a code, when you see the word code, you can go back into the email and look for the word code or an example of a code, which you can actually find in the last line or towards the last line of the email, where it says, then, instead of making a payment, enter promotional code TY67708. So that series of letters and numbers hopefully will jump out at you while you are skimming and scanning, actually, because it looks quite different. So there's our code, which means the answer is D. All right. Thank you very much. Great. Okay, nice work so far. Thank you so much. Let's move on. So we're going to skip 166 and 167, and we're going to move on to a scary one. 168 and 171. Sorry, 168 to 171. All right, so there's actually 4 questions we have to tackle for this one. This one's a little bit longer, so I will give you just over 2 minutes to try this one. All right, it is a little bit longer. So go ahead, 2 minutes in, starting from now. Go ahead. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to cut you off there. So it's just over 2 minutes. It was about 2 minutes, 10 seconds. Okay, so let's give this one a try. If you didn't finish, don't worry. We can kind of work through it together, all right? We can think about the thought process that you could have when finding these responses. We can do it together. All right, so 168. So let's look at the question, first of all. So who will distribute vouchers to the group members? All right, so any responses? The answer is D for the first one. The answer is D. All right, so let me actually interject just for a minute. This passage is the longest one that we have had to tackle so far. Which means maybe the approach could be changed a little bit. Again, you can still use these tips, absolutely. But what I mean is that you could, or you should, go through it in a little bit more detail from the beginning. So as in the skimming of the passage should be a little bit more thorough. Just to make sure that you're not missing anything that could be helpful later on when you're finding those answers. In particular, what you can do is have a closer look at the first line of each paragraph, for example. So in this example, we've got day 1 to day 5. Some sections like day 5 are only one line, so that's okay. But what you can do is have a look at the first line and the last line. First line, last line, first line, last line. So basically like introduction, conclusion, introduction, conclusion. And that can give you a much, much better sense of what might be included in the middle, if that makes sense. So having a really good look at the outline of this passage that you're reading for longer passages, all right? Breaking it into paragraphs. Okay, so even if you didn't do that this time, that's absolutely fine. That's just a slightly different approach, or a little bit more information about a method of skimming. Okay, don't worry about that too much though at the moment. All right. The other thing you can keep in mind, in addition to looking at introduction, conclusion format, are the capitalized names. Let me write that down here. Capitalized names. For example, place names. Here we go. Place names and people's names. All right. In this example, in this passage, there are quite a few place names and quite a few people's names, which means they're probably asking for some kind of information about those people or those places in the questions as well. So making full use of those capitalized words can help you navigate a longer passage such as this one. Okay, so let's work through it together, and I hopefully will give a better example of what I mean here. Okay, so 168, one more time. Who will distribute vouchers to the group members? The answer is D, a tour guide. Okay, you could establish this right from the beginning. So again, try and keep in mind that the questions do tend to go in sequence. So this is a good example of that. You can figure out that they're going to meet a tour guide in the day 1 section. So quite early on in the passage, they say in the second line of day 1, check in and receive meal vouchers. There's the same word right there, meal vouchers, to be used at either of the hotel's restaurants for breakfast from Ms. Alves. All in the same sentence. So vouchers plus Ms. Alves. And we have already established earlier on in day 1 that Ms. Alves is the tour guide. which was actually mentioned in the line above that. It's not really a full sentence. Group will be met by your tour guide, Alexa Alves. Okay, great. So we're basically doing the same thing that we did yesterday in terms of expanding outward from where the question is, where the blank is, or yeah, finding that information and expanding outward or backwards or forwards, whichever way you need to go. Okay. All right, let's move on. 169. 169. How will the group travel to Porto Grande? A, B, C, or D? We've got A. All right, 169 is A. All right, which is by train. Okay, so this is an example where you can look for the actual name. So you could choose Macapa or Porto Grande. All right, so either one of those, you can have a look and scan the passage for those names throughout the passage. So in my case, I decided to go for the second one, basically because there's two words that are part of that name, so they might jump out a little more obviously. So I was scanning for Porto Grande. Maybe you chose the first one, which led me to A, which is the answer, by train, which is in day 2. So there's a section there. It says meet at Porto Grande train station at 5:30 p.m. So they are going there by train. Okay. 170. Moving on. For what day is special footwear recommended? So this is kind of interesting. For something where it says looking for something special footwear, for example, what you can do is begin by scanning the passage again for something that is special. So either the name, or sorry, either the word special, you can look for the word special, or you can look for something that is a little bit different than the rest of the passage. Something that would indicate something is not the same as the rest of the passage. And luckily, in this case, we actually have an asterisk, one of those little star things, if I can find it on this keyboard. There we go. Oh, it won't let me type an asterisk. Why? Okay, an asterisk is the little star thing, just in case you didn't notice. All right, so day 3, 2 lines in, there is an asterisk next to the hiking on Katia Park trails. All right, I'm so sorry for my pronunciation. All right, so there's an asterisk right there, which leads us down to the bottom of the article. And again, this is what I mean about checking all of the information, because it might be really, really tempting to just sort of skip that footnote like it's not important. But on the TOEIC test, those kinds of footnotes will be very important, so make sure you don't skip those. All right, so there's your special asterisk. It actually gives you more information in the note section. It says, it is strongly recommended that you bring hiking shoes or boots for your comfort and protection, as the trails in the park are rocky and often muddy. All right, so there's your note, your special note, which doesn't fit in with the rest of the passage. Special footwear note. So the answer is C. To sum up, the answer is C, 170, C, day 3. Okay, very nice. We got one more for this one because it's extra long. 171. All right, there. Oh, sorry. Where will the group visit a museum? So again, A, B, C, and D. What you can do is go back to the passage and scan the passage for any of those capitalized names. All right. So if we go in order, A's location is mentioned in day 1, where they say they're going to do some sightseeing on foot. They mentioned in the day 1 section. So that's not the answer. B location is mentioned in day 2, and it says they're going to have dinner. So that's also not the one we're looking for. C was the place they recommended to have some special footwear. So we already covered that one in 170. So that's not the right answer. And so that leaves us with D. All right, so you can do that process of elimination, and you will be left with the one that we haven't covered yet. And just to double check, if you have the time, you can go back and find that name in the passage, and sure enough, it is mentioned in day 4, where it says the bus departs from the hotel at 8 a.m. for this location. The sightseeing is in that location. All right. Nice job. Okay. So we're just about out of time. We've got about 2.5 minutes left, which is not really enough time to read the next section and talk about it together. So at this point, I would like to just open it up to you guys for the last 2 minutes. If you have any questions, any concerns, any comments, any feedback, please let us know. I would love to hear from you. It's very lonely on this end of the screen. I can't see you. All right. So any kind of feedback, any comments would be awesome. And especially any questions. That's the most important thing. Because we are going very, very quickly. I'm also curious, for those of you who are taking the TOEIC, is anybody doing the TOEIC on July 27th? I think that's our next TOEIC test. July 27th. Is anybody taking that TOEIC? It's a, what is that? Monday, Tuesday, Thursday? It's a Sunday. Sunday, July 27th. All right. For those of you who are taking the TOEIC test, a very, very good luck to you from me and from us here in the office. And hopefully we can meet again before or after the TOEIC test. We're not entirely sure at the moment, but I would love to catch up with you again and to find out which parts were most difficult, which parts were better than before, which parts you would like to work on in more detail next time. So I would love to hear from you when you are finished your next TOEIC test. Okay. Good luck to everybody, and that about wraps it up for today. I'm not seeing any comments coming through, which is fine for now. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming. It's been a very, very productive and busy 7 sessions. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you've got some of these notes recorded. And again, if you need to review anything, these videos are going to be available on YouTube. So if you didn't catch anything when I was talking super, super fast sometimes, please go back and have a look at the videos one more time, and it'll give you a chance to look at the boards in a little bit more detail as well. All right. Thank you very, very much for coming. That's all from me for today, and I will see you next time. Good luck on your test, all right? Study hard, good luck, and I will see you next time. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.